Hey there everybody, it's Eternal Snowman here with a new video. This time I'm going to be talking some anime content here with Sakurasou no Pet no Kanojo, one of my personal recommendations as one of the best anime of all time. And I'm going to be really talking about basically what I think is really great about Sakurasou no Pet no Kanojo, or from here on out I'm going to be referring to Sakurasou. And before you start watching this video, this is going to be a spoiler warning. This video is going to be talking a lot about what makes Sakura so great, so of course it's going to also include spoilers about what the show is about and what is great about it. So of course, if you don't want to be spoiled, then don't watch this video or go watch the series first before you watch. And if you don't mind spoilers, then continue on. So I'm going to first start with the production value. So I want to give a shout out to the great production value of the show, which is really underrated. I think you really do have to have at least a good production value. And while production value generally won't make or break an anime, I think like okay, break maybe some people will argue that it can break a show, but I think it doesn't necessarily make a show. And this has been shown with stuff like SAO and Guilty Crown and stuff where, it's not the only thing that matters, where even if you have an amazing production value, where like the visuals and graphics are like amazing and the songs are amazing and that kind of stuff, it's not enough. You still need like the substance behind all that glamour. And I mean, Sakurosou, it has such a great production value. First off, I want to credit all the people who worked on the music for this show. OSTs, openings, endings, they're all fucking amazing, and they all just do a fantastic job at really making the show come alive. And it's really really amazing because of some of the song soundtracks of like the final few episodes of like the graduation ceremony where they have this like really touching scene, or like when the characters like are crying and they have a really emotional breakdown, and you can really just feel the music kind of sinking into how the entire show feels. And so even though it doesn't really make the show, I think it heavily enhances it. And this picture that you see here with the all the characters clapping in the first opening of the show, this is one of my favorite just pictures of like any anime ever. It just makes me happy seeing them because it just is such a jolly feeling with the song playing in the background. And I think a lot of the character design and everything that brings the show to life is just really amazing. It doesn't have to be that way. Like it, even without this stuff, it's already a great show. But it also has that top tier production value that you would expect from a great anime. So it's definitely something that is kind of like an icing on the cake. But really, what makes Sakurosou such a great show, and in my opinion, what sets it apart from all the other slice of life shows to make it, in my opinion, the best slice of life show, and in my opinion, one of the best, a top two anime, with the other one being Log Horizon, but I think a lot of that has to do with my own personal bias. So I think like Sakurosou really makes a perfect show that uh, anybody can enjoy, which is really really good. So anybody who has an interest in slice of life should really enjoy this show because mostly because I feel a connection to their characters. And I'll start with the main character protagonist, Kanda Sorata. So I think in a lot of people's eyes, the main character or protagonist often does not have to be the best character in the show. I would argue that that's not really the case, and a lot of the characters of the most successful and popular anime really like are don't follow that kind of trend. So characters like Sorata, Shiroe, Lelouch from Code Geass, and all the lead characters, I think they do represent a lot of what the show is about. And I think Kanda Sorata is really just a great view of what Sakurosou is really about. And Sakurosou is really about how you can struggle and struggle and struggle, and maybe you can never reach the highs that some people of the other people have because of talent. But if you work hard you give it your all, then you're going to meet the most amazing people and the most amazing kind of experience that you could ever have. And you can achieve higher highs than maybe you could have ever done before without giving it your all. And Sorata really represents that. So at the beginning of the show, he really talks about how he believes his life is boring, and it's kind of like a monologue about after what happens during the show. But he's basically saying that he never tried to make his life interesting, and that's why his life was boring. He always thought that it was because he was like unlucky, or he didn't have anything, or like he didn't have like the talent or whatever. But after he met Mashido, who is the female lead of the show, which I'll talk about a bit later, he really realized that it's not because he isn't it's not because he isn't talented enough, or it's not because that he's unlucky, or like life didn't want to make it interesting. It's more that he wasn't ready to push himself, and he needed to push himself to that next level. And after he was able to engage and really become kind of push himself towards his own dreams and excite himself, that he was able to ever achieve those goals and ever make life interesting. And so what he represents in Sakurasou is really amazing, because a lot of shows with like, especially slice of life shows, have like self-insert protagonists, or have characters that don't have ambitions, or they aren't relatable to the cast because they're either too good, or they aren't good enough, or like, they don't have real struggles like Sorata does. And Sorata is one of the characters that like really is brought to life throughout the show, because at the beginning we kind of relate to him. He doesn't have much of anything, and you can relate to his struggles, but it's not like a perfect fit. Like, you would never experience the stuff that he experiences throughout the show, but it's like you can kind of understand, because he has struggles, and he meets people who are more talented than him, and he like kind of envies them at first, but he comes to terms with that. And he is just like that perfect character that has like the right amount of self like, or like being able to relate to that character, but also being able to have his own character, as in bringing to life his ambitions, and being able to really be himself. And I think it's not done enough in anime these days, because it's hard. It's very difficult to be able to portray a character that is so fleshed out and like written well. And so Sorata really is kind of like a dying breed, if I will, in anime, or like a rare breed, I guess. As he really represents a lot of the great things about anime, but like it just isn't shown a lot in some of the other anime. And I think it really is represents what Sakurasou is really good at, because Sakurasou isn't just about the romance. It's not just about the like what high school life is like, or whatever it is. It's about like ambitions and what you can accomplish in life after you like try and give it your all. And I mean, to that vein, I think the character that represents that the most, even more than Sorata, is Aoyama Nanami. So I think Nanami has like okay, well, I mean, obviously she's in the show from the creator's perspective because it's a romantic interest for Sorata, but first off, I want to talk about the romantic interest. I really do think that having two kind of romantic interests in a slice of life show is like kind of the perfect number. When it's one, it can sometimes feel a little stale, unless like it's like specifically made as like kind of like they're already dating, and it's like kind of that kind of romance. But if it's like a kind of like a more high school romance, I think two is like one or two is the best. Any more and it kind of feels too harem-y and like fan servicey. Nanami is more of like the more I guess kind of natural romance with Sorata, because they're more kind of similar in terms of both ability and experiences. They've known each other for longer, and they kind of struggle through the same things, because Nanami is really a character that is trying to show that you can work hard and you can push yourself, but like sometimes you need to also take a step back, because she works herself to the bone and never asks anybody for help. and she kind of grows as a character, which is something that a lot of the characters, well, all the three main characters, Nanami, Sorota, and Mashido, all grow very, very much throughout the show. These three especially, but you can also see it throughout the other characters, just less prominently. So Nanami really has a lot of that pushing herself, and then at the beginning she just tries to take everything on herself, and in the end she isn't able to accomplish her dreams, but she continues to work towards it because although the ending isn't technically complete, it's about like the ending, like a satisfying ending, because there is more to the show and it's kind of open ended, but it's to the point where Nanami hasn't given it, like the end of the show is where she failed to get in to her voice acting school, but she continues to push herself even though to be able to try to achieve her dreams just like Sorota, because those without talent basically need to work much harder. And it shows that people in this show, that people who are successful aren't just the ones that are talented, right? Even the talented ones have to work hard and hard and work even harder than most people may think. So it's like if you are both talented, if you're not talented, then you need to even work harder than those people who are already working so hard at the things that they're already good at. So I mean, they really talk about this aspect of like talent a lot because it kind of represents a struggle and about hard work, and like I'm not too sure exactly why the author chose to talk about this, but it does represent a lot of the struggles of like youth and maybe people's own perception about like how life is unfair or whatever. But really, the author is saying that life isn't really unfair because you've never tried hard enough to get to the point where you can actually say that. And if you have gotten to that point, then you'll realize that life is not actually unfair, or at least that's how I interpret it Sakurasou as. So I think Aoyama Nanami gives a really nice kind of counterpoint to Mashido, who is the other female lead. So of course I'm going to be talking about Mashido, who is one of my favorite characters in anime. I mean, honestly, Nanami is also one of my favorite characters in anime, and she would be a best girl in like almost every other show. And I feel like that is part of what makes Sakurasou so great, is that each of the individual characters, all three of the main leads, Sorota, Nanami, Mashido, are all fantastic characters by themselves, and even some of the supporting cast is already very, very good. And when you put them all together and they have nice synergy together, like everything about it just works together, and they have some of the best written characters, which is what makes it so good. So, of course, Mashido has her own character arc as well. So when she first joins the show, she's kind of like simple-minded. She doesn't really think that about much except for her like own dreams and passions. She's kind of a self-centered person, and this is kind of what attracts Sorota to her at first as well, because he sees her like single-mindedly going to her dreams, and like that's what drives Sorota to do his own dreams, which is why kind of like their synergy works so well together, because as Mashido grows to really love Sorota, it doesn't like Sorota like kind of grows to kind of like at first he's enamored with her, but kind of like as she grows to like Sorota more, it kind of contradictorily makes her do things that make Sorota like her less, because he feels that she's throwing away some of the things that he can never have, in a sense. Even though he doesn't like, he knows that it's like kind of a wrong thing to do, and it's kind of representing this youth, because you can't really have this kind of perfect life, right? And it's like understandable that in like high schoolers wouldn't be able to deal with their emotions to the level that adults would, so they kind of lash out at each other. I mean, even adults would do so, but I'm saying like it really does show that like a more high school or like youthful kind of thing, where you can kind of feel that they are still young and immature because they kind of lash out at each other for these kind of things. So, but as the show goes on, Mashiro really grows to become more of an emotional person, and she was first at like very cold at first, but she kind of learns how to um, like become an emotional person, and I think it kind of is represented in her own personal decision, as she used to be a painter, and then she kind of moves away from that and tries to become a manga artist when she moves to Japan to Sakurasou. And it kind of is because painting is more seen as like kind of a colder form, and then when she starts writing manga, she has to learn about the emotions. So she kind of has to go through this thing where she learns about the love and the and as she slowly grows to have friends, and like Sorata as like somebody that she like has a crush on, um, and she wants to experience these more emotional things that she had never wanted to do before. And I think it really just creates such like a character that is so. I mean, I'm not gonna say that every like romance is something that is like kind of an acquired taste in anime. I think having a compelling romance both between Mashiro and Sorata, and even Sorata and Nanami, as well as some of the other characters, you just want them to be together because like it's very like heartfelt, and like their feelings for each other are just so nice, and like it hurts your heart when you see those very touching scenes. So I really do feel like the characters are the strongest point of Sakurasou, and that they really carry a lot of what the show is about. Just as in like what they do. And so basically, like, you know, Mashido is just a fantastic character for that reason. And I think she really is able to embody what like that talent, uh, that that pinnacle of talent, where you have to work hard, because like she basically single-mindedly pursues her goals, and you can see that because of that she kind of is able to reach these highs that nobody else, like that Sorata and Nanami, aren't able to do because they've been spending their life doing these other things. But she's so incapable at doing the other things in life, just like taking care of herself, her like washing her clothes, or like getting herself dressed. It's kind of like an extremist form of like how some people, um, you know, if you pursue your dreams and just like single-mindedly do these kind of things, you may be able to achieve these highs that nobody else are able to do, but like they aren't well-rounded at all. And I think, like, in a sense, Sakurosa does represent that. Like, all the people who are so amazing and these geniuses who are gathered at Sakuroso, they aren't able to do a lot of these things. They're kind of shown as outcasts in society. But being an outcast isn't necessarily a bad thing, is what Sakuroso is saying. And it is important that you pursue your dreams. So, moving on to that, I think a big part of it is about the supporting cast. Um, I'll say it's not that much about Chihiro Sensei, who is like the teacher there. She doesn't contribute that large of a part, but she's there. Like she has her moments. But the entire supporting cast of Jin and Misaki especially, I think, are very important. And then in the second half of the show, Rita and Akasaka, Ryunosuke, are both important as well. Jin and Misaki really represent an older presence in the house and or in Sakurasou, in their lives, about like how not everything is like all um, like good in life. And in a way, Jin and Misaki are kind of like the older counterparts to um, Sorata and Mashiro, because Jin is really like he isn't like a good, or like he isn't able to reach the levels of Misaki, and he's kind of just always running at her, or like running at her shadow basically, and trying to catch up with her. to be able to really be stand on her level and be able to say that he's like good enough to be with her. But Misaki doesn't want that. Like she just wants to be with him, and so they have kind of this kind of contradiction that Sorata and Mashido kind of have throughout the show. That even though like sometimes each person has their own agenda about what they want from other people, but you can't get everything that you want without also giving to other people what they want, right? And then Akasaka and Rita represent kind of a different light of how it's more of like a cutesy romance, but it's about how you're opening up to people. And it's about how Ryunosuke or Akasaka is able to open up to people throughout the show with Rita as his helper, kind of as kind of an opposite of what Mashido and Sorata represent. I mean, gender opposite of what Shiro and Mashido and Sorata are. So I think that like the different parallels between the other members of the cast are very interesting, and about how like it all kind of ties together towards the central themes of the show that I've been talking about. So like the talent disparities and like being able to come to gripes with your emotion and that kind of stuff. So I think it just brings the entire show together so well. And yeah, so the next part will be the final ending. So this is kind of like my final spoiler warning. So I've talked kind of like bits and pieces about most of what's gone on in the show. So at this point, for sure, tune out if you are interested in Sakurasou, because if you haven't watched this ending, it's definitely something that you should experience before you hear anything about it. So the final arc of Sakurasou has to deal with, like, you know, how, as a reminder to those who have watched the show, deals with how, like, uh, Sakurasou is going to be torn down, and they won't be able to do anything about it because, um, or like, each person has their own kind of conflict about this. So, you know, Jin and Misaki are leaving anyway, but they want to be able to preserve this place where they made so many memories, especially Misaki. And then, you know, the three yeah, Aoyama Nanami is like thinking about going back to Osaka because she is going to fail her. Well, okay, throughout this arc, we learn that she fails her voice acting, like final voice acting gig, and or test or whatever, so she's not able to actually stay. And as she promised her dad that she has to go back to home, and there's this very touching scene about that as well. And then Sorata is like he's the one who keeps wanting to drive this. And then like they win over Ryunosuke in the end, but he doesn't really care that much. But and then Mashido, she wants it to stay, but then she learns that it's her fault because they basically are demolishing Sakurasou because they feel like it's impeding her own learning, Shina Mashido's learning. So all these different agendas, and then they go to try to collect signatures um, to be able to convince the school to kind of like if they collect 2/3 of the student body signature, then they're able to overturn this board's ruling. And because of that, they try to go out, but they aren't able to do it because in Japan, after you graduate or like after you get into college as a senior, you don't really go to school that much for like the last term or whatever. So it's like pretty normal in high school that you just to kind of get like your own time off while you're doing like entrance exams and that kind of stuff, which is like for about like the last third of school. So they aren't able to collect enough signatures, and because of that, they kind of feel like going into the last few episodes that they are like it's a hopeless situation. And so what happens in the final episode 23, which is like the most beautiful episode, and I definitely cried when I was watching it, both the first time and the second time and the third time I watched it, because it's just the most beautiful thing ever. It's uh, they talk. I think one of the strengths of this show. So before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about something else. Is that one of the strengths of the show is that it's able to weave in both backstory and the present time very well. So even though you don't really at the beginning you don't really know anything about the characters, you kind of learn organically about the characters, but also like there's some bits and pieces about how their backstory has been, like about their backstory up to that point, which is weaved in, so you kind of learn about them at the same pace that like somebody else would learn about it, if you like actually met them in real life. So like in this scene, it starts with Misaki giving a speech at graduation when they aren't when everybody else thinks that, like when the audience and Sorata and Nanami and Mashiro all think that it's doomed, like they can't save Sakura, so this is kind of like their final memory together. Misaki goes up and gives a speech, and starts off, and it's like at the beginning it's kind of like they use it for comedic value because Sakurasou is kind of like a comedy show, but Misaki is kind of like a goofball, right? So she kind of goes up and then people think it's a little odd, but so she starts with like about how she like even comes to Suihai, which is the school they go to, um, and it's because like she's kind of an oddball, so she wants to come here to meet other um, Uchujins, or like aliens in Japanese, but it really means like um, to meet other people who are just weird and out there like her. And she was able to meet them at Sakurasou, and she kind of talks about all the memories that happens throughout the show. It's almost kind of like a recap episode in a sense, but it's with her narrating. But it's really just talking about the very special memories to everybody. It's not like and how like they're how she views them all and how she's able to really use them and become so attached to all these memories that she's made throughout her last year at like Suihai and Sakurasou, and how she's able to achieve all her dreams. And because of that, they basically she has like this very touching speech, and everybody is very happy, and they're all like in tears and like cheering and stuff. And um, Sorata, and they basically have like this kind of revolution. And Sorata says thank you to Misaki, and so does Nanami, and all the Sakurasou characters. And so basically it's just about how Sakurasou was able to get there, and then like the out of a twist, they basically vote to keep Sakurasou alive. And I know I'm not doing it justice at all, because there's this beautiful music in the background. There's this beautiful animation where like there's this scene where Sorata is like right after this picture where he like is being pinned down by the teachers, and everyone else is rising up, and they're like holding their flowers or whatever, and they're cheering, and then they like throw them up, and it's like the most one of the most touching endings in all of anime. And of course I was crying during this because it was just a beautiful ending to a fantastic anime. And so I think what this is like it's just amazing that it was able to wrap up all these like emotions and put together such like, because I mean, as someone, I can appreciate this kind of scene a lot more because I recently graduated high school, or like not that recently, but like a year ago I graduated high school, and I know like the feelings that go into this kind of graduation ceremony are so high, in terms of like, I was crying at my graduation ceremony. I don't have to like be ashamed to admit that, right? But like what I mean is like that kind of feeling is just captured so well in this scene, and it's able to really it's more than just like kind of like a scene, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was able to um, capture all the feelings of those previous like whatever 5 6 episodes in. And I think that's really what a strength of Sakurasou is. It's able to portray some characters and have some really high emotions that we have emotional investment in. So what are my overall thoughts on Sakurasou? So I kind of mentioned this briefly before, but Sakurasou, in my opinion, is a top 2 anime of all time, and the best slice of life anime of all time. So I highly recommend it to everybody to go check it out. And it's really because of like why is it so good? Why do I want people to watch it? And why do I think it has so much merit? It has to do with how well the characters are being portrayed and how it has a theme beyond just the characters. Each person's ambitions, and it's how the talent disparity between characters and how you have to keep pushing yourself to be harder, pushing yourself harder. And I feel like maybe it is kind of like something that speaks a little bit more to me, but I think it's something that everybody can kind of relate to and appeals to everybody. So I think it's something that everybody should check out, and I think it's just an amazing anime that has one of the a great production value, especially like I want to go back to actually to the ending scene because I think one of the most touching parts of it was that the opening one started playing throughout the ending of the show, or like the final episodes, the second to last episode, and like the climax. And I think that really has to do with like it's just like perfect everything, that like it's a perfect storm because like the beautiful animation and the beautiful soundtrack and the beautiful scene, that everything is just like overwhelming emotions. So I just wanted to share all of this kind of stuff with you guys because I had just an amazing time watching Sakurasou again recently, because I just felt like it was uh, time to revisit the show. And I mean, I love it just as much as the first time and the second time I watched it. So I recommend everybody to check it out. And also, let me know what you guys think of this type of video. If you would be interested in me doing like another type of video kind of similar to this, I can talk about other shows and what I think makes them fantastic, like Log Horizon or One Punch Man or like Code Geass or that kind of stuff. So if you're interested, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or just tell me and whatever. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And if so, then leave a like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me as a content creator. And I'll see you guys in the next video for some different things. And thank you for watching.